All right, g'day. Welcome back to another YouTube video. And this one's just going to be a race recap. It is currently Wednesday, the 6th of May. So 3 days, 2 days post-race, 2 days in between the race, third day post-race. And this is going to be a really positive one. So I thought we'd just do a raw sort of race review, talk about what went on, and talk about maybe what the rest of the season could look like, because obviously I stopped posting for a long time. Made a video a couple of weeks ago in the lead into West Sydney, sort of explained what was going on around my health and just not tolerating training properly. And frankly, the reason I haven't been on YouTube up until last week is I was just embarrassed. You know, I got my pro license and straight away since then, I just could not tolerate training. Nothing seemed to work. And I pretty much put up like I either DNF'd races or I put up my worst ever numbers. And I was really just at the point where I didn't know exactly what I believed in terms of my ability anymore. Like, I started almost considering the fact that maybe I'd just gotten lucky in my first couple races or something like that, or maybe I'd maxed out my genetic potential, or I really had no idea what was going on. But this review is going to be really positive because I had a great weekend at West Sydney. I had a lifetime best performance by a mile, which we're going to go into. And while I'm happy with it, it also showed that I do have room to progress into. I really can see where the improvements are going to be now. Training, I feel like I'm actually improving, as opposed to the previous 18 months where I actually just trained and continued to get worse. So, yeah, in terms of the actual week, I actually started getting sick about 10 days out. I just had a lingering sore throat, a bit of a respiratory thing, bit of a cough, stuffy nose, and a bit of a headache. Took 2 days of decent volume but very, very low intensity. Really couldn't shake it, and sort of just panic trained a little bit of intensity. Still got a couple of solid sessions done and started coming a little bit better maybe around the Tuesday week of the race. When I say a little bit better, I still actually have some lingering like sort of mucus build up in my throat, which just does not want to go away. But I presume part of that's probably due to the fact that I've continued to train throughout this whole thing, as opposed to like take any time completely off. So keeping cortisol high, keeping the immune response high. I don't know, complete speculation. So trained reasonably hard into the event. So on the Thursday, did 5x2K. On the Tuesday before the race, did 5x2K with 30 times 100 in the pool. And then on the Wednesday, did 5 times 10 minutes threshold with 2 rounds of 1050s hard in the pool. And then started my taper process from there, but still tried to keep a decent amount of volume in. Leading into race day, flew into Sydney on Friday. I was fortunate enough to be staying with an athlete that I coach, Riley. So got to his house on the Friday. On Saturday, I still feel a little bit sick, funnily enough, but it kind of is what it is. It was making me nervous, but then we move into Saturday, check in, get back to the room, everything's sweet. Bike course was really fast, everything was looking really positive. I don't know if this room was cursed. We had the aircon on, it was nice and turned down, we had a window open. Neither of us could sleep, so we were in the same room and both of us reckon we got about 3 hours of sleep that night. And I jokingly said, I started having all these like pretty like negative thoughts. I was like, I jokingly, but not jokingly said, I'm thinking of pulling the pin on the race. I might just rock up and watch. I got a couple guys racing, so, just watch them, whatever. Obviously, I wasn't going to go all this way to not at least start the race. So pretty much shitting my pants all morning, just thinking, maybe this is just going to be another repeat of every other race I've had for the past 18 months. Go for a run warm up, and positively, heart rate was getting up quite quickly, which off of 3 hours sleep is actually a pretty good indicator, because normally if you're that sleep deprived, you'll just find your heart rate just stays like absolutely in the mud. But heart rate got up pretty quickly during a shakeout run, and I felt fine. In terms of getting in the water then, I really struggled to find feel, which is, it is what it is. I probably didn't do enough wetsuit swimming race week. I'm normally pretty disciplined about swimming in the wetsuit a couple times race week, but I only did one wetsuit swim the day before. And on top of that, this is a freshwater swim, which doesn't help somebody like myself. So, yeah, couldn't find feel for the water, line up on the start, and I pretty much placed myself in the middle right behind a couple of strong swimmers. I was really adamant about just seeing how long I could hold on for. So gun goes off, and it seemed like, I could be wrong, it felt like a pretty hot start, especially comparative to Geelong, where I'm of the opinion that if I had have just swam harder in Geelong and not been a bit of a pussy, I probably could have made at least like the second group. However, in this one, I don't know if it was just that my swim was feeling crap or if it was a really hot start, but there was just absolutely zero chance I would have made any group in this. I just felt like I just got gapped so easily. And the weirdest part is I still don't know what happened exactly, but my chest sort of tightened up at the start of the swim, and I felt like insanely short of breath. And it almost felt like, I don't think I've ever had like a panic attack, but it felt like what people describe as a panic attack. I desperately wanted to stop swimming about 300 or 400 meters in, but obviously knew that was like not a good decision to make. So I continued to swim, but I did, lose the pack and ended up in literally just this group of, obviously like we were all weaker swimmers in that group, and we all ended up swimming high 27, which is a pretty abysmal swim, even by my standards. Now, I do believe the West Sydney course is one of the few honest swims. I think a lot of 70.3 swims are a bit short when they're measured ocean, but because it's a regatta centre, you actually have like proper line markers. So it's pretty easy for the officials or the team doing the swim course to actually get the distances correct. So yeah, that was a pretty disheartening start. I got out around a couple guys that I expect to be ahead of, even if not by much, by a minute and a half maybe. So yeah, pretty rough start. But anyway, moved through T1, pretty smooth T1. I don't think my T1 was too bad. It was pretty much, it sat around the average of everyone around me. Got out onto the bike course and had a few guys around me. However, that pretty quickly broke up as soon as we actually got out onto the main road. So a few guys around me, one particularly strong biker who I got out with, who honestly I would have liked to have been a little bit ahead of him in the swim, but I know he's one of the strongest bikers in terms of Australian triathlon or Australian long course 70.3 triathlon, whatever you want to call it. So my sort of objective was to sit with him as much as I could, and we had Race Ranger, so I was able to, it was an honourable race. I respected the rules. Despite not having any officials around me, I'm pretty specific around, trying to do the right thing. Especially when you're not fighting for first place. It's kind of like, what would cheating get me? Absolutely nothing. So basically sat on his wheel for pretty much the entire first lap. And that was like a really good sign. So I have always struggled. I've believed for a while that my CDA was pretty poor. Pushed 280, 290, even close to 300 watts in a couple of 70.3s, and really never, I think my fastest bike split was somehow only 209. But after a few upgrades on the bike, namely having like a carbon cockpit, which I got off AliExpress, the Winnow Sports one, even a simple upgrade like that, which was $350, and maybe I've definitely altered my position a little bit and made it a lot better, but still, you know, minimal money invested in terms of I've never had a bike fit. I didn't overspend on the cockpit. The entire cockpit itself was $700. Put together my fastest bike split ever for a 202. And it was almost a 201 as well. So held on to Tom for the first lap, which was really good. That was around 300 watts. On the second lap, we passed a group and he sort of continued riding and he went on to ride a 159, which is, yeah, a pretty phenomenal bike split. But I kind of did two things. I had already planned to positive split the power in terms of the bike, because it's just, with the pro racing, it's just very, and to be honest, if you're a really elite age grouper, you kind of have the same thing as well. You go so much faster second lap when you've got all the age groupers out on course. So I had already sort of internally planned to push around 300 watts lap one, which perfectly lined up with sort of holding on to Tom's wheel. And he rode off at the start of the second lap. I actually knew I wanted to drop my power. So I dropped to about the 280, 285 mark and just really coasted that second lap. Heart rate came down pretty aggressively, pretty much sat in the mid 150s for a lot of it. Really just trying to think about having a good run, and only biked the second lap marginally slower than the first, but for like nearly 20 watts less. So overall, it was a really good decision on my part, not being a stupid good biker for sure. But position felt good. I was aero, nutrition worked, no dropped bottles this time. Everything just sort of went to plan. And yeah, sort of proved to me as well, like I don't think I'm still on a rim brake trinity. I don't really see that as a disadvantage. I think a lot of people are pretty quick to upgrade these days. While I think there may be some benefits, I don't see any reason I can't bike under 2 on the bike I'm on right now. You know, I'm probably going to look at a helmet change at some point. I don't know if that Met one that I have is the fastest. Outside of that, I don't really think there's much that needs to be done. I think, you know, add 20 watts. Adding 20 watts to my power in a 70.3 is probably doable over the course of 18 months to 2 years. And dial in the position ever so slightly, and you know, you're at a sub 2 bike, which is making you pretty competitive, especially if you're doing it solo or with one or two other people. So yeah, bike conservatively back into transition, passed a group and caught up to a lad named Jacob Lapari, who I thought I dropped on the way back. Turns out I gave him an absolute ride all the way back into town, so like 22 and a bit K. I thought I was solo the whole time, but that's, you know, that's part of the game. That's kind of what makes it fun, is these things. So came into transition, so average power for the bike, 293, which was like my second highest power in a 70.3. I've pushed more before. I don't even want to count the other one, to be honest. I have pushed a bit over 300, like 301, but it was in a terrible position. Like it was in basically a road bike position. So it was like effectively completely cheating. So yeah, 293, came in feeling really comfortable, had a terrible T2. I think this is a bit of racecraft, not really racing or not really paying attention in racing for the last 18 months. I was just shocking in terms of the T2, couldn't get the socks on. I was in a new pair of Alpha Flies, which were a size and a half down from what I normally use, just because I had sized all my shoes up over the last 18 months to try and get rid of some shin pain I was having. I thought maybe I was cramping my feet up a little bit too much. Anyway, side story. I was in a new shoe that I'd only done a couple of Ks in that week. So that was a risk, but those shoes ended up working fantastically. Get out onto the run course, and just settled in. I was in no rush. I didn't really know what I could do in my brain. If I had have run under 116, I was going to be pretty happy. Around about 4K in, Jacob, who I'd ridden back with from the far end of the course back into transition, he'd kind of gapped me at the start, and I think he also had a much better transition than me by like at least 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So I reeled him in over the first 4K, and he decided to sit with me. So again, that was fun because it was my first sort of experience in the pro race of sort of having a bit of a battle with somebody, even though it wasn't really a battle. We were sort of just pulling each other along. I guess it was a battle because I'm sure he wanted to beat me and I wanted to beat him. Ran with him for pretty much side by side up until the 17 or 18K mark, where we caught up to a guy named Thomas Williams, who we'd been reeling in, maybe clawed back 30 seconds over the course of like 12 to 14K. As we came past him, he sort of made a move. This is, by the way, at 17 or 18K. I'm probably doing a terrible job of this race recap. It's a bit all over the shop, but come past this Thomas Williams with at 17 or 18K. He instantly surges back in front of me, maybe trying to psych me out or something, or he's just gotten a second win because he's realized his position's in danger. I mean, this is the ultimate battle for 16th right here. So this is probably the most high stakes thing occurring on course, obviously. So yeah, he surged to the front. I've sat on him. He's a bit taller than me, so he's a good windshield in the final straight around the regatta before you come back into the finish. Sat on him for maybe 500 to 800 meters, and then with about 2.5 to 2 and a bit K to go, I just decided I was going to have a crack because there was a bloke named Reese Corbishly, apologies if I butchered his last name, up the road, who looked like he'd slowed down a bit, and I wanted to have a good dig and see if I could get to him. So started pushing, felt like I was sprinting. Realistically, I only ended up increasing my pace by like 4 seconds per K, but it felt like I was flying. And closed in, couldn't quite catch Reese. He passed the line, I think 8 seconds ahead of me. I reckon I probably took 10 seconds out of him maybe over the course. Probably even less, actually. That's probably a lie. Might be less. Let's say 10 seconds max over the last 2 and a bit K, but he did turn around and he did dig, and he just clearly verified had that dog in him because he sort of collapsed at the line and looked absolutely spent. And crossed the line, much to my surprise, with a 1:14.57. So not only did I break my first 1:17, I broke my first 1:16, and I broke my first 1:15. So overall, a really solid run and just a really good day. There's not too much to say about that. I executed the whole thing pretty much perfectly, in my opinion. I came back with a 12-minute PB. And for the first time since getting my pro license, now, like when I say stuff like pro license, I'm not sitting here acting like I'm the same caliber as like a Jake Birtwistle who ended up winning the race, or a Christian Blumenfeld, or any of these like top 50 guys or top 20 guys. I'm fully aware I'm like a domestic can, but it was nice to just for the first time feel like I actually half deserve to be in that field. Because ever since getting my pro license, I've DNF'd races, or I've done like 410, 420. Again, because of sort of the health complications I outlined in the last video. So I was wrapped. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do, and I do see a path into the sort of 340s, the low 340s, or even sub 340. I think over the next couple of years, if I can stay dialed in, that is definitely there. And yeah, I was just stoked to put it together and just sort of prove that I do actually belong in that field, because that's really all I wanted. Up until this point, I felt like a bit of a joke, because when you walk around saying like, oh, I'm having issues with training and recovery and blah, 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 it kind of just sounds like you're waffling. And I suppose at the end of the day, it is waffle until you prove it. So yeah, just really proud. came in with a 3:47 for the 70.3. Now, it was a pretty quick course, but I would think that 3:47 would be a sub 3:50 any day of the week on most courses, because the freshwater swim really kind of takes 90 seconds to 2 minutes out of your swim, especially as a weaker swimmer. So yeah, pretty rough review. I'll be curious. Can't believe I just did that. I went to check the time on my little screen here and paused it or stopped it. But we're at over 20 minutes, so pretty average race recap. I doubt anybody's gotten this far. But yeah, just stoked. More to come. I'm more confident back on the YouTube now because I feel like I've kind of proven my worth in a way, and proven, you know, all the stuff I've sort of potentially talked a big game about in terms of knowing how to train and being an okay athlete. So more content to come. Yeah, just wanted to get on here and talk about the race, and because yeah, for now I'm stoked. So it's on to Cairns in a few weeks. Let's see if we can put together my first good Ironman as well. So apart from that, thank you for watching, especially if you got this far, which I doubt anyone has. I will see you in the next one.